You have come here not merely to listen, but to remember. For there is something within you that has been silenced, hidden beneath layers of adaptation, compromise, and the masks you wear for the world. I call it the forgotten child. It is not a child in the simple sense of age or innocence, but the primordial child, the living root of your soul, the first witness of life that you once were. This child has never ceased to breathe within you. Though you may not hear its voice, it lingers, buried in shadow, carrying the memories of all that was once vital, creative, and unbroken. And tonight, as I speak to you, I want to draw your gaze inward to meet this forgotten presence, for it is here that the essence of your wholeness waits to be rediscovered. In my long work with dreams, I have observed again and again how the psyche never forgets what the ego chooses to abandon. Dreams bring back what the conscious self rejects. They place before us images that at first seem absurd, troubling, even childish. And yet, when we follow their symbols carefully, we find ourselves led to a chamber within the psyche where the inner child waits. Sometimes this child appears in dreams as a small boy or girl, sometimes as a frail figure, sometimes as a radiant being. Always, it is you. It is your life essence, unadulterated by the demands of adaptation. The forgotten child is the vessel of the self before it was fragmented by the necessities of survival. Before you learn to betray yourself in order to belong, many of you live under the tyranny of the persona, the mask that faces the world. The persona says, be strong, be competent, be acceptable, do not show weakness. And so you become professionals, parents, citizens, respected members of the collective. But underneath this facade, there is a voice crying, see me, remember me, I am still here. This is the cry of the forgotten child, and if you ignore it long enough, it turns into symptoms. The anxiety that tightens your chest, the depression that drags you into silence, the restless longing for something undefined. The forgotten child becomes the ghost haunting your house, the unseen shadow pulling at your soul. Do not think that because you have aged, the child has died. Time does not kill what is eternal within the psyche. This child is archetypal. It is the image of beginnings, of play, of the innocent contact with mystery. It lives in the collective unconscious, shared by all of humanity. Myths across cultures speak of the divine child, the Christ child, the Horus child, the child Krishna, the infant Hermes. Each of these symbols points to the truth that renewal always begins with a return to the child. The forgotten child is not simply you in your biography, it is the image of your soul's origin. It is your possibility of rebirth. I want you to imagine now that you are standing in a forgotten forest of your own psyche. The trees are tall, but the air is heavy, and you are unsure where the path leads. Suddenly, you hear the sound of laughter, thin, distant, almost like an echo. You follow it, though your adult mind hesitates, for laughter in the darkness feels unsettling, and there, beneath the twisted roots of an old oak, you find a small figure crouched, eyes wide, holding something in their hands. This is your forgotten child. They look at you with recognition, as if you have been away for a very long time. They do not speak, but you feel in your chest a wave of grief and tenderness. You realize that you abandoned them when you chose to be what the world demanded. You realize that they have waited for you, patient, yet wounded. This image, my friends, is not fantasy. It is the truth of the unconscious. You cannot become whole until you take this child by the hand. The forgotten child holds both light and shadow. It holds your earliest joys, the way the world once shimmered when you saw it with unbroken wonder. The first time you touched water, the first time you felt music stir your body, but it also holds your earliest wounds, the rejection you suffered when you expressed your true self, the pain of not being enough for those whose love you craved. Every trauma of childhood that you could not bear to process was handed to this inner child to carry. That is why, when you approach it, you feel both love and terror. To embrace the forgotten child is to embrace both the miracle and the wound. Yet, without this embrace, you remain divided, condemned to repeat cycles of self-betrayal. People often ask me, why is it that as adults we repeat the same mistakes, fall into the same relationships, suffer the same humiliations? It is because the forgotten child continues to seek recognition. It returns in projection. You meet someone and you feel an inexplicable pull. Perhaps you even call it love at first sight. In truth, your inner child has recognized in that person the qualities of your first caregivers, the same hope for acceptance, the same fear of abandonment, and so you repeat the story again until you finally stop looking outward for the parent you lost and instead turn inward to embrace the child you abandoned. The forgotten child does not need the world to repair it. It needs you. There is great danger in ignoring this truth. For when the child is suppressed too long, it begins to rebel. It sabotages your ambitions. It whispers doubts into your mind. It bursts forth in uncontrollable anger or in reckless indulgence. Many midlife crises are nothing other than the rebellion of the forgotten child, demanding to be seen before the end. People who seem self-destructive, who throw away stable lives for a moment of passion, are often driven by the unconscious cry of this child. The risk is great, but so is the opportunity. For if you dare to stop, to listen, and to turn your gaze within, you may find in this child the very key to your renewal. I once had a patient who dreamed repeatedly of a small boy locked in a cellar. The boy would call out, but no one came. In waking life, the patient was a man of great reputation, admired for his composure and intellect, yet he suffered a gnawing emptiness. When he began to work with the dream, he realized that the boy was his own young self, silenced, when his father demanded strength and his mother offered no comfort. For decades, he had lived as if that boy were dead. But when he descended into that dream cellar again and again, something changed. He began to speak with the boy, to listen, to weep, slowly. He reclaimed his capacity to feel. His life did not become easier, but it became authentic. He was no longer two halves at war, but a man embracing his wholeness. This, too, is the work before you. The forgotten child is the beginning of individuation. Individuation is not a lofty philosophical concept. It is the labor of remembering and reintegrating all that has been lost in you. It is the slow alchemy by which the fragmented ego becomes aligned with the deeper self. Without the child, there can be no individuation, for the child is the seed of the self. To ignore it is to build a life upon exile. To embrace it is to discover the wellspring of creativity, spontaneity, and meaning. You must not think of this as regression. To return to the child is not to become childish. It is to recover the eternal usefulness of the psyche. The power of renewal that dwells in the unconscious. Even the darkest symbols conceal the child. In the alchemical texts, the philosophers spoke of the rebis, the hermaphroditic child, born of the union of opposites. This image, grotesque to the literal mind, reveals the secret of transformation. When you unite the conscious and the unconscious, the masculine and the feminine, the light and the dark, a new child is born. This is the forgotten child, transfigured, the divine child within you, radiant, indestructible. It is not merely personal, but cosmic. To touch this child is to touch the root of being, to sense your participation in the eternal dance of creation. Do not imagine this path is easy. To meet the forgotten child is to feel again the helplessness you once felt, to remember the times you cried in the night and no one came, to admit the terror that you buried beneath competence. The ego resists this encounter fiercely, for it threatens to undo the illusion of self-sufficiency. Yet only through this undoing can you discover the true ground of your being. You are not meant to be invulnerable. You are meant to be whole. And wholeness includes the child, the wound, the joy, the mystery. I ask you now, when was the last time you heard the laughter of your own soul? Not the laughter that mocks or defends, but the laughter that springs from the sheer wonder of existence. That laughter belongs to the forgotten child. When was the last time you wept without shame, as you once did when life overwhelmed you? Those tears belong to the forgotten child. When was the last time you created something not for gain or recognition, but simply because your hands longed to shape, your voice longed to sing, your body longed to dance? That impulse belongs to the forgotten child. Without it, you wither. With it, you awaken. The forgotten child still lives inside you, and though you may deny it, it will not cease to call. Its voice comes through your dreams, through the faces of those you love and hate, through the sudden nostalgia that grips you, through the longing you cannot name, You cannot kill this child, for it is eternal. But you can reconcile with it. You can say, I remember you. I will not abandon you again. And in that moment, the fracture within your soul begins to heal. When you first begin to sense the forgotten child stirring in you, there is often resistance. The ego, proud of its accomplishments, whispers, this is regression, this is weakness. You must not look back, you must move forward. But the soul does not move in a straight line, it moves in spirals, revisiting old ground until it has been truly integrated. To embrace the forgotten child is not to go backward, but to deepen, to move down into the root where life draws its nourishment. You cannot grow towards the heavens if your roots are withered. The forgotten child is your root system, the hidden life that sustains you beneath the surface. I have seen in countless lives how the refusal to acknowledge this child leaves people stranded in illusions of maturity. They speak with the voice of competence. They work tirelessly. They maintain their roles, but inside they are brittle. A single crisis, a loss, a betrayal, an illness shatters them, because beneath their structure there is a wound that has never been healed. The forgotten child cannot be ignored forever. It waits like a seed in the dark soil, demanding the rain of your attention. And when the storms of life come, that seed either bursts into new life or festers into decay. The forgotten child does not only carry wounds, it carries imagination. This is perhaps its most threatening quality to the ego. For imagination dissolves the rigid boundaries of the persona. To dream is to allow the child to speak. I recall many dreams where adults, rigid in their waking lives, suddenly find themselves playing with toys, painting wild colors, or running barefoot through fields. They wake disturbed, ashamed even, and ask, why would I dream such childish things? But I tell them, this is not trivial, it is essential. The child reminds you that life is not merely duty, but play, not merely order, but mystery. The forgotten child offers you the capacity to re-enchant the world, but you fear this enchantment because it threatens the control of the rational mind. Control is the ego's fortress, built against the chaos of the unconscious. Yet within that chaos lies the fountain of meaning. The forgotten child lives close to this fountain, drinking from it without hesitation. That is why children can believe in magic, why they can see gods in stones and spirits in the wind. You dismissed these visions as you grew, calling them fantasy, but they were the raw language of the psyche, symbols offered freely before censorship set in. To recover the forgotten child is to reopen your access to the symbolic life, without which the soul starves. Do not misunderstand me. The forgotten child is not innocent in the sentimental sense. It is not a soft, harmless creature to be coddled. It carries your rage as well as your wonder. It remembers every injustice, every betrayal, every time your truth was silenced. If you approach it only expecting sweetness, you will recoil when it shows you its scars. Many turn away at this moment, unwilling to face the full truth. They want only the light of the child, not its darkness, but you cannot divide them. The forgotten child is whole, and to embrace it means to feel both the pain and the possibility. This is why many weep when they encounter it. They are not merely weeping for what they lost. They are weeping for the wholeness they could not allow themselves to hold. The archetype of the child appears in myths as both vulnerable and divine. Think of the infant Moses hidden in the reeds, threatened by death, yet destined to lead a people. Think of the Christ child, helpless in a manger, yet bearing the promise of salvation. These images are not history alone, they are psychic realities. They point to the paradox of the forgotten child. It is powerless in one sense, utterly dependent, yet it holds the seed of your transformation. To deny this paradox is to deny your own potential. The forgotten child is both your wound and your redeemer. When you allow yourself to enter into dialogue with this child, strange things happen. Your dreams shift, your body softens, your relationships begin to change. You may suddenly feel grief where once you felt only numbness. You may discover creative impulse long buried. You may feel drawn to places or memories you thought you had outgrown. All of this is the psyche's way of leading you back to integration, but it requires patience. The forgotten child does not reveal itself all at once. Like a wild animal, it approaches slowly, testing whether you are safe. If you rush, if you demand, it retreats deeper into shadow. You must wait, you must listen, you must prove by your gentleness that you will not abandon it again. There is a peculiar moment in analysis when the forgotten child finally speaks. The patient sits, struggling with words, and then suddenly something fragile emerges, often in the form of a memory. Sometimes in a flood of tears, sometimes in a quiet silence, filled with recognition. I have sat with men who suddenly recalled the smell of their mother's dress, with women who remembered the moment their father turned away, with countless souls who suddenly realized that they had been carrying a lonely child for decades. In that moment, the room shifts. It is as though time collapses, and the child is present, and the adult, for the first time, extends a hand inward and says, "I see you." This is healing, not in the sense of erasing pain, but in the sense of reuniting what was split apart. The forgotten child is the carrier of authenticity. Without it, you cannot know what you truly desire, for all your desires are then contaminated by what you were taught to want. You think you want success, admiration, wealth, love, but beneath these lies the original longing of the child to be seen, to be held, to be allowed to exist as you are. Until you face this, you remain enslaved by unconscious patterns. But once you dare to meet the child, your desire becomes clarified. You no longer chase shadows. You begin to build a life that resonates with your soul. This is why individuation always leads to authenticity. It is not about becoming extraordinary, it is about becoming whole. I must also warn you, the forgotten child is often projected onto others. You may find yourself drawn to younger people, idealizing them, envying their vitality. You may fall into relationships where you try to rescue someone, believing you love them, when in truth you are trying to rescue yourself. Or you may despise childlike qualities in others, playfulness, vulnerability, innocence, because they remind you of what you buried. Projection is the psyche's way of forcing you to see what you refuse to acknowledge, but projections cannot save you. They only entangle you until you finally turn inward. The forgotten child belongs to you alone. There is a secret here, one that many resist. The forgotten child is not only your past, it is also your future. The psyche is not linear. The child is both origin and destiny. When you die, when you return to the mystery from which you came, you will meet this child again, radiant and whole. It will be the last image you see, for it is the image of eternity within you. That is why many nearing death dream of children, of play, of beginnings. The soul circles back to its root, carrying all it has gathered, returning to the innocence that was never lost but only hidden. To meet the forgotten child now in life is to begin this return consciously, to live in alignment with the truth that awaits you at the end. I tell you, the forgotten child still lives inside you. It lives beneath your polished words, your careful strategies, your adult weariness. It lives in your sudden laughter, in your unexpected tears, in your yearning for freedom. It lives in every dream where a child appears, asking you to notice, to care. Do not push it away any longer. You have carried it too long in silence. It is time to turn, to kneel, to look into its eyes and to say, I am here. Only then will the fracture in your soul begin to mend. Only then will the labyrinth of your psyche reveal its center. Only then will you know what it means to be whole. If you walk further into the forest of the psyche, beyond the first encounter with the forgotten child, you soon discover that this child is not alone. Around it lurk the shadows you try to escape. The forgotten child and the shadow are twins. The child is what you once were. The shadow is what you had to bury in order to survive. When you look into the eyes of the child, you see not only innocence but also all the impulses, emotions, and needs that your world taught you to fear. And so the task becomes greater. Not only must you remember the child, you must also reconcile with the shadow that has grown around it. The shadow often guards the child like a ferocious animal. It appears in dreams as a monster, a threatening figure, a dark forest, or a locked cellar. Many people stop here, afraid to enter. They want the light of the child, but recoil at the shadow's roar. Yet this roar is only the child's unspoken pain, disguised to protect itself. If you can endure the fear, if you can stay present before the darkness without fleeing, the shadow steps aside and the child reveals itself again. That is why dreams that terrify you are often the most important. They are doorways. What you fear most guards, what you need most. The alchemist spoke of the nigredo, the blackening, as the first stage of transformation. It was the descent into chaos, the confrontation with putrefaction, decay, and death. They did not fear this stage. They revered it, for they knew that without dissolution there can be no rebirth. The forgotten child is hidden within this nigredo. To find it, you must allow yourself to pass through the blackness. You must let the old images of yourself dissolve, your illusion burn away, your defense crack. Only then can the child emerge, luminous, reborn as the symbol of renewal. This is the secret hidden in myths of descent, Orpheus into Hades, Christ into the tomb, Inanna into the underworld. Each descent leads to the rediscovery of the child, the seed of new life. When you neglect the child, you risk falling into sentimentality. Sentimentality is a counterfeit of true childhood. It is nostalgia that avoids pain. You may idealize your childhood, longing for a lost innocence, but this is only the ego's way of avoiding the truth. The forgotten child is not a memory of a golden past. It is the living core of your psyche, with all its joy and sorrow intact. If you cling to false images of innocence, you will never meet the real child. Only when you face the full complexity of your beginnings, the love and the neglect, the laughter and the terror, can you embrace the child as it truly is. And in that embrace, you will find yourself renewed, not by escaping reality, but by living it more fully. The archetype of the child appears also as the trickster. Think of Hermes, the infant thief who stole Apollo's cattle, or Loki, the mischievous spirit who disrupts the order of the gods. The forgotten child in you also plays tricks. It may sabotage your plans, unsettle your routines, draw you into chaos. You curse it, calling it childish, irresponsible, self-sabotaging, but in truth, it is forcing you to remember the trickster child breaks your structures because those structures suffocate your soul. The forgotten child disrupts so that you might awaken. This is why so many of your crises, though painful, eventually lead to growth. The child within you refuses to let you live a lie forever. Consider for a moment the paradox of growth. You strive to become mature, autonomous, rational, yet true growth is not the abandonment of the child, but the integration of it. To be mature is to protect the child, not to kill it. Many adults mistake cynicism for maturity, but cynicism is only the child's despair frozen into armor. True maturity laughs again, dreams again, plays again, yet without losing the wisdom of suffering. It is a circle. You begin as a child, you pass through the exile of adulthood, and you return to the child transformed. The cycle of life is the cycle of remembering I recall the dream of a woman who stood before a house engulfed in flames. As she wept, she noticed a small child standing unharmed in the center of the fire. Smiling, she awoke trembling, convinced it was a nightmare. But in truth, the dream revealed her salvation. The fire was her life's collapse, the burning of her old identity. The child was her essence, untouched by the flames. When she understood this, her despair became courage. She realized that no matter how much she lost, the child within her was indestructible. This is the secret that myths whisper. The divine child always survives. It may be hidden, threatened, crucified, but it rises again. And so it is with you. Beneath every collapse, every humiliation, every death, the child endures. Why is this so? Because the child is the self, not the ego, but the self, the totality of your being, conscious and unconscious, mortal and eternal. The child is the symbol of your wholeness, compressed into an image of vulnerability so that you will not overlook it. If it appeared in its full radiance, you would be blinded. So it comes as a child, fragile, yet luminous, to draw you in gently. To embrace the forgotten child is to embrace the self in its most accessible form. It is to bow before the mystery of your own existence, to recognize that within you lives something greater than your conscious mind can fathom. Do you see now why I call it my final message? For all my theories, all my words, all my explorations of archetypes and symbols, it comes down to this. Do not forget the child. You may master concepts. You may achieve worldly success. You may even touch mystical visions. But if you neglect the child, you remain incomplete. And what is incompleteness but the slow death of the soul? The forgotten child is your salvation, because it is the root of your life. Without it, you are a tree cut from its roots, destined to wither, no matter how tall you stand. With it, you are a living being, grounded and renewed, capable of bearing fruit. You may wonder, how then do I meet this child? The answer is not in technique, though analysis and dream work can help. The answer is in attitude, humility, patience, openness. You must become again, as a beginner, willing to listen without knowing, willing to feel without controlling. The child reveals itself when you stop trying to dominate your psyche and begin instead to honor it. In every dream, ask yourself, where is the child here? In every relationship, ask, what is my child projecting onto this person? In every silence, ask, what is the child longing for? Slowly, with reverence, the child will answer, and when it does, you will feel something shift. You will feel life return to you in ways you cannot explain. Colors may seem brighter, sounds more vivid, presence more immediate. You may discover that even in suffering, there is beauty You may sense that you are not alone, but accompanied by an eternal presence that has been with you since the beginning. This is the forgotten child whispering, I am still here. I have always been here, and I will never leave you. And when you draw near to the forgotten child with reverence, you may begin to feel something beyond yourself stirring. For the child is not only personal, but archetypal, a living symbol that belongs to the collective unconscious. This is why myths from every land and every time echo with its presence in the child god Horus of Egypt, in the infant Krishna dancing on the serpent's head, in the Christ child laid in a manger. The same image repeats. The child carries the seed of salvation, not through strength, but through vulnerability. The psyche tells us again and again, within what seems most fragile lies what is most eternal. This paradox is the very heartbeat of transformation. Many of you fear vulnerability. You have built your adult lives upon defenses, intellect, achievement, control. You believe that to let yourself be vulnerable is to invite destruction. But in truth, vulnerability is the only doorway to the soul. The forgotten child is vulnerable, and this vulnerability is its power. It opens you to relationship, to mystery, to the unseen depths. The ego despises this, for it cannot control it, yet the self insists upon it. For without vulnerability, you cannot love, you cannot create, you cannot truly live. To recover the forgotten child is to consent to be vulnerable again, to risk wounding, to risk wonder. In the alchemical texts, the child is sometimes called the filius philosophorum, the philosopher's child, born from the marriage of opposites. It is the new creation that emerges when all divisions have been reconciled. The alchemists depicted it as a radiant child in the center of the mandala, the lapis, the stone of wholeness. This is not a fantasy. It is a symbol of the deepest process in the psyche. When you embrace the forgotten child, when you integrate its pain and its joy, something new is born in you, a wholeness that did not exist before. The child is both beginning and culmination. It is the Alpha and the Omega within your soul. But I must warn you, to come this far requires sacrifice. You cannot bring the forgotten child into the light while clinging to the persona that abandoned it. The masks you wear must be loosened. The roles you idolize must be humbled. The illusions of perfection must be surrendered. This is why individuation feels like death. It is the death of falsehood. And in that death, the child rises, not as you remembered it, but as it truly is, radiant, fierce, untamed. You thought it was weak, but in truth, it carries a strength far beyond your adult willpower. For it is connected to the archetypal source of life itself. Sometimes, in analysis, when the child finally emerges, it comes with a flood of creativity. Patients who have been dry for years suddenly paint, write, sing. They are astonished. I did not know this was in me, but it was always in them. It was the child's voice, silenced, waiting for release. Other times, the child comes with deep grief, as if the soul must weep for decades of exile before it can play again. These tears are not weakness, they are baptism. They wash away the hardness that the ego mistook for strength. If you allow yourself to weep with the child, you will also laugh with it. The two belong together like night and day. Think of your life as a great mandala. At the edges are the roles you play, the duties you fulfill, the identities you cling to. But at the center is the child, the self, the eternal spark. To live only on the edges is to live in exile. To journey to the center is to come home. The forgotten child is your compass. Whenever you feel lost, whenever you feel hollow, it is because you have strayed from the center. The child calls you back, not with arguments, but with longing. This longing is holy. Do not suppress it. Follow it inward, even if it leads you through darkness. For at the end of that darkness shines the light of the child. There is also a collective dimension to this truth. Humanity as a whole suffers because it has forgotten its child. Civilizations that worship power, technology, conquest. They are adult in their arrogance, but infantile in their soul. They have silenced the child, the capacity for play, for wonder, for reverence, and so the world groans under the weight of this exile. If humanity is to heal, it too must remember its child. Every myth of renewal, every prophecy of redemption speaks of the return of the child. The child is the future of the world, just as it is the future of your own soul. To honor your forgotten child is also to honor the forgotten child of humanity. When you close your eyes tonight, listen for its voice. It may come as a whisper, a memory, a fragment of a dream. It may come as an ache in your chest, a sudden tenderness, a forgotten image. Do not dismiss it. Do not rush to interpret it. Simply be with it. Say to it, I see you. I will not abandon you again. And then wait. Slowly, gently, the child will trust you. And in that trust lies the rebirth of your soul. I leave you with this truth. The forgotten child still lives inside you. It is not gone. It never was. Beneath all your masks, all your wounds, all your striving, it waits. And when you finally turn to it, when you gather it into your arms, you will discover that you have not been carrying it. It has been carrying you, for it is the eternal center, the divine spark, the self itself. Do not forget it. Do not forsake it. For in the end, when all else falls away, it is the child who will lead you home